The world had been holding its breath. Tensions between Washington and Tehran had reached an all-time high following months of covert operations, sabotage, drone strikes, and proxy conflicts across the Middle East. The U.S. claimed Iran had crossed a red line, enriching uranium beyond 90%, nearing weapons-grade material, and preparing ballistic missile warheads capable of carrying nuclear payloads. But the immediate trigger came on a quiet Sunday morning. A U.S. Army forward operating base near Erbil, northern Iraq, was hit by a barrage of Iranian-backed militia rockets. 17 American soldiers were killed. It was the deadliest single attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East since 2003. Within hours, President Trump, returning to the political stage with full executive powers after months of rising tensions, authorized Operation Iron Resolve. The attack begins. At exactly 3:22 a.m. Tehran time, the skies above Iran lit up. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers took off from Diego Garcia, flying thousands of kilometers undetected, each carrying 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators, MOPs, targeting Iran's hardened nuclear sites beneath Natanz and Fordo. Simultaneously, U.S. Navy destroyers and submarines stationed in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea launched over 170 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each zeroing in on radar stations, air bases, anti-aircraft missile systems, and IRGC command bunkers. U.S. F-22 Raptors provided air dominance, patrolling the skies while EA-18G Growlers jammed Iranian radar and communications. In just 45 minutes, over 90 Iranian strategic and military sites were struck with pinpoint precision. Tehran's sky turned into a canvas of fire and smoke. Iran responds. Iranian state media called it a cowardly surprise attack. But the leadership did not hesitate to retaliate. Iran's ballistic missile force, led by the IRGC Aerospace Division, launched dozens of Fateh 110 and Shahab 3 missiles targeting U.S. bases in Iraq, including Ain al-Assad and al-Harir. The impacts were severe. Satellite imagery showed craters over 10 meters deep and infrastructure devastated. The Iranian Navy, using fast attack boats and kamikaze drones, attempted to swarm U.S. warships in the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Paul Hamilton was hit by a drone strike, suffering damage and minor casualties. Iran activated its network of regional proxies. Hezbollah launched over 1,000 rockets into Israel within 24 hours. Houthi rebels in Yemen struck U.S. bases in Djibouti and Saudi Arabia. Shia militias in Iraq and Syria surrounded remaining American assets. In a single day, the Middle East plunged into multi-front warfare. Domestic shockwaves and international panic. In the U.S., Wall Street crashed. The Dow Jones plummeted by 2,800 points in one day. Oil soared past $200 per barrel. Gas stations across the country saw long lines. Cities including New York, Los Angeles, Houston, and Washington, D.C. raised their terror alert levels to red. Airports tightened security amid fears of Iranian sleeper cell activation. In Iran, Supreme Leader Khamenei declared total resistance, calling upon all Muslim nations to unite against the Great Satan. Millions of Iranians took to the streets, burning American and Israeli flags. The Allies choose sides. Israel declared full military readiness. The IDF began airstrikes into Syria and southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah missile sites and Iranian Quds Force assets. Russia placed its Mediterranean fleet on high alert. President Putin warned against further U.S. intervention, condemning the strikes as illegal aggression. China froze military-to-military communications with the U.S. and held emergency joint naval drills in the South China Sea, signaling a shift toward confrontation. NATO split. While the UK and France called for de-escalation, Poland, Romania, and the Baltics sided with Washington. The UN Security Council met in an emergency session, but failed to pass any resolution as vetoes blocked consensus. The world was now governed by chaos. As physical bombs fell, a digital war raged beneath the surface. The U.S. Cyber Command launched Operation Silent Firewall, disabling Iran's electric grid across Isfahan and cutting off power to millions. In retaliation, Iran's APT-34 cyber group hacked into U.S. water treatment plants in Florida and Texas, causing temporary shutdowns. Wall Street servers were attacked, halting trading for hours. Major banks like J.P. Morgan Chase and Citigroup reported breaches. The line between military and civilian infrastructure blurred. No system was safe. Chapter 7. The world holds its breath. The ripple effects of the war hit every corner of the globe. India and Pakistan raised alert levels along their borders, fearing spillover or opportunity for conflict. Saudi Arabia, caught in the crossfire, suffered drone strikes on its Aramco facilities. Europe faced a new refugee crisis as thousands fled Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria, fearing an all-out regional war. Global food prices surged, with the Middle East unable to maintain exports and supply lines disrupted. Chapter 8. Nuclear brinkmanship. Satellite imagery showed Iran moving nuclear material to unknown locations. U.S. satellites spotted increased activity near Fordow in Iraq. Analysts feared Iran might attempt to assemble a crude device out of desperation. In response, the U.S. deployed nuclear-capable B-52 bombers to Diego Garcia and ordered the activation of DEFCON 2 for the first time since the 1991 Gulf War. Whispers of tactical nuclear weapons began to surface. Chapter 9. No turning back? Despite back-channel efforts by Oman, Turkey, and Switzerland, neither side appeared ready to stop. The U.S. demanded a complete end to Iran's nuclear program and regional proxy network. Iran demanded a full U.S. military withdrawal from the Middle East and the lifting of all sanctions. Neither side trusted the other, and now millions of lives were at stake. As dawn broke over the Middle East, the region was no longer the same. The precision U.S. airstrikes left key Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, command centers in ruins. Satellite images began circulating on international media, showing flattened runways, blackened buildings, and smoking craters where once stood Iran's prized defense infrastructure. Inside Iran, chaos spread rapidly. In Tehran, hospitals braced for mass casualties, while civilians, gripped by fear, flooded grocery stores and gas stations, preparing for what many feared would be a long war. Social media platforms were flooded with videos, flashes lighting the night sky, people screaming, air raid sirens blaring. Within hours of the strike, Iranian missile batteries along the Persian Gulf coast roared to life. Dozens of short-range ballistic missiles were launched toward American bases in Iraq, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Some were intercepted by American Patriot systems, but several made impact, killing a number of U.S. personnel and injuring dozens more. In retaliation for those casualties, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet launched a second wave from the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier group, this time targeting Iranian missile launch pads, naval bases in Bandar Abbas, and drone manufacturing sites in Mashhad. Meanwhile, the cyber war silently erupted. American cyber units from U.S. Cyber Command infiltrated Iran's digital infrastructure, disabling sections of the electrical grid in southern Iran and scrambling communication networks used by Iranian military command. In response, Iran-backed hackers launched cyber attacks against U.S. energy infrastructure, briefly disrupting pipelines in Texas and causing market panic. Hezbollah and militias in Syria and Iraq didn't wait for direct orders. Thousands of rockets were fired into northern Israel, triggering the Iron Dome defense system in what became the heaviest barrage since the 2006 war. Israel responded with its own airstrikes into Lebanon and Syria, effectively opening another front. Yemen's Houthi rebels, aligned with Tehran, also entered the conflict, targeting U.S. ships in the Red Sea using Iranian-made drones. The entire region was unraveling into chaos. The U.S. president, now under intense pressure domestically and internationally, spoke again. "We will not be drawn into a prolonged war, but if attacked, we will defend our people, our allies, and our future. Peace is our goal, but peace through strength." But Iran was not backing down. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei convened a rare emergency war council with the IRGC and top government officials. Revolutionary rhetoric filled Iranian airwaves. Massive funeral processions for IRGC generals killed in the initial strikes swept through the streets. Nationalistic fervor surged. Russian and Chinese officials met in Moscow, calling the American strike a violation of international law. Russia began moving additional naval assets toward the Mediterranean. China issued a stern warning to the U.S., stating it must immediately cease hostilities and return to diplomacy. In the Gulf, oil tankers halted movement. Insurance rates skyrocketed. Global markets plunged. Panic spread to Asian and European stock exchanges. Energy experts warned of a possible oil shock worse than the 1970s. Back in Washington, protests erupted, some in support of the president's actions, others condemning what they saw as a reckless path toward another endless war. Diplomats scrambled to open back channels through Qatar, Switzerland, and Oman. But so far, the war machine had no brakes. A chain reaction had begun. A single strike had turned into a regional firestorm, and with each passing hour, the chances of containing the conflict grew slimmer. World leaders now whispered what many feared to say out loud. Has World War III just begun?